I have something really exciting to share with you all. My friends at Leading Edge Seminars are hosting an incredible learning and vacation experience in Cancun this February called Innovations in Psychotherapy. This is a unique opportunity to get away for a week this winter while you learn new skills and earn CEs in the morning, then have afternoons to do whatever you like at an all inclusive luxury resort. And from November 14th through the 28th, they're having a big Black Friday sale where you can save 40%. 40%, y'all, on your workshop fee when you purchase accommodations at the same time. So just imagine this: fresh coffee in the morning on your private balcony, yoga at the beach, an all you can eat breakfast overlooking the ocean, training until lunch with one of your favorite clinicians. Then you have the afternoon to have fun and a beautiful tropical paradise. At the Innovations in Psychotherapy Cancun, you'll have 6 half-day CE workshops to choose from. Frank Anderson, MD, will be presenting IFS parts, yours and theirs, what every successful IFS therapist needs to know. Lisa Ference will be talking about treating anxiety and depression, creative strategies to help your most challenging clients. John Briere will be presenting on complex trauma and challenging client presentations. He's going to address 5 clinical dilemmas with mindfulness, compassion, and resilience. Tammy Nelson is going to present on clinical interventions for sex, intimacy, and relationship dilemmas. Ariel Schwartz, somatic therapy, new approaches to trauma treatment, and Eliana Gill, using expressive therapies in clinical practice. 2023 best practices for working with kids and families. And if you're ready to get away this winter, then I hope you'll consider heading to Cancun for Leading Edge Seminars, Innovations in Psychotherapy. Now, you can click on the link in the show notes where you can go straight to signing up for any of the 3 weeks. You could do 1 week, you can do 2 weeks, you can do all 3 weeks. How amazing would that be? 3 weeks in Cancun. But be sure to go ahead and sign up between November 14th and November 28th. Reserve your spot as soon as you can. These are going to sell out. And as a special thank you for going through my affiliate link, which, by the way, if you decide to sign up, I might receive a small compensation at no extra cost to you if you use my link. But on top of that, I'm also going to offer you one of 2 things. You can get a 30-minute consultation with me. We can talk about anything you like: podcasting, shifting, pivoting your skill sets outside of the therapy room. You can use that 30 minutes however you like, or you can get 4 of my pod courses for free. So when you sign up, after you sign up, I will send you over more information about how you can pick one of those options. Okay, you guys, don't forget November 14th through the 28th. That's the Black Friday special where you can get 40% off on the workshop fee when you purchase accommodations at the same time. Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Well, hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I hope you're doing well and you're staying warm in your part of the world. I'm looking out the window and it's probably low 50s, but it is really pretty and sunny here in South Carolina. It's not too bad for a winter. I got to say that. But how about you? What's it like? And what's it like where you are? What's the weather like? I'd really love to know. So feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook and let me know what the weather's like in your part of the world. But anyway, while I can't know for sure what the sky looks like where you are, I can bet with 100% certainty that your inbox is about to be flooded with emails for Black Friday deals, Cyber Monday stuff, Giving Tuesday, end of the year, whatever sales, right? And I mean, it would be great if you remembered my promotion and the sea of all these things that are coming at you. So I want to remind you once again, if you're on my email list, you got this already, but I want to tell you or remind you that I am offering a Black Friday Cyber Monday deal, which is 40% off all of my pod courses. And right now I have, I think it's 11 or 12 pod courses on my website. So using the code to Black Friday 2 at checkout will give you 40% off of each one of the pod courses. So I think that takes it down to about like $9 per continuing education credit. And don't forget, Mustard Consulting is approved by MBCC to give you guys continuing education. So be sure to head over to my new pod course site, which is lisamustard.freshlearn.com, where you can see all the pod courses that are available. Don't worry if you are can't write this down. All the information will be in the show notes. So be sure to check out the show notes. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, I'm excited for y'all to meet Gill Tietz. She is my guest this week, and she is the host and creator of the SoberPowered podcast. Maybe you've heard of Gill. She has quite a brand and an influence in the sober community, recovery community, and she's going to tell you, share her story in this episode of the podcast this week. She's also going to, I mean, gosh, she really does dive into what it was like for her to stop drinking, why she stopped drinking, kind of like what she went through to get to the point where she made the decision to stop drinking, what it was like when she decided to leave her job and start her podcast full time. So it's just such a great interview. And Gill is just such a gift to the recovery community. I hope you guys give this episode a listen and give her a follow and share her story, share her podcast. If you're a clinician and you have clients out there that are dealing with recovery or addiction issues, Gill is a biochemist. So she's got the brain for the science behind why addiction and recovery, the whys behind all the things that happen to somebody when they decide to become sober. And she covers so much of the science behind recovery and addiction on her podcast. And it's in very manageable chunks of information. I learn a ton from her show. And yeah, let's just dive right on into this episode. So you guys be sure to listen, give her a follow, and let me know. I'd love to know if recovery is something that you struggle with or you're dealing with, because she gives us so many great resources in this episode. Also, before we jump into the content, I want to remind you guys that the podcast represents my opinions and my opinions of my guests. The content in the podcast should not be taken as medical advice. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice and should not be relied on as health professional advice or personal advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions that you may have because of this content. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm really excited for you to meet this week's guest. Her name is Gill Tietz, and she is the podcaster behind SoberPowered. And I know there's so many questions I have for you, and I'm kind of thinking about this over the weekend, which direction I wanted to take this episode. But I would love it if you could share with my listeners like who you are and what you do, and maybe we'll get into like all of the SoberPowered stuff after that. That's cool.
Yeah, so my name is Gill, and I live in the Boston area. I was a biochemist, so I worked in biotech for a while, but I left my job in June to work for myself, which has been really nice. And I just celebrated 3 years of sobriety last week.
Oh, congratulations. That's a
Thank
huge
you.
milestone. Huge. Right now I work for a military branch, but prior to working for the military, I worked in a addictions recovery center, and I was the family therapist, and really I didn't know much about addictions when I got into that work, but it was an incredible population to work with. And there's so much to recovery. And I know on your podcast, you talk a lot about the reasons why people drink and like the chemistry and the biology behind drinking and recovery. How did you know that you were an alcoholic?
There were signs for a long time, like almost in the beginning. There were a bunch of signs, like I couldn't seem to stop when I started. I never understood like how much alcohol was enough. Even if I wanted to have like one or two for some reason, I couldn't. I always seemed to embarrass myself and get like way drunker than everybody else. So there were little signs there. higher tolerance, things like that. But I kept believing that it was just something everybody struggled with, and I just had to learn to moderate and practice and whatever. And I didn't really accept it until the day I got sober.
Mm.
I was fighting like to be, quote, normal the whole time. And I thought it was really possible for me. And despite all the signs that were there, I had this like skewed perception of reality. I thought that everybody drank like me, and that kept me holding on. And then also all of my achievements and my lack of consequences kept me holding on too, and like justifying why it wasn't that bad.
Okay, I gotcha. And so how did you decide to quit, or how did you decide to, one day just not use anymore?
Yeah, it was hard, and it was probably like a 6 month process.
Mhm.
So it started because in the last year or so of my drinking, I became really suicidal,
Mm.
which in the beginning I thought was just unique to me. Of course, I thought that I was a suicidal person. I didn't think it was the drinking, because it could never be, precious alcohol. It
Right.
had to be my fault. And I got so desperate one day because I started getting afraid of those thoughts. Like every time I got super drunk, which was a few times a week, I was a daily drinker. I would stay up all night and I would force myself to be awake. And I would just think about how much I hated myself, and like, your husband doesn't deserve this. You should set him free. Like all of these really scary thoughts. And eventually it became so scary that I felt desperate for a change. And that desperation made me do a 90-day challenge. I didn't think 30 would be enough to like really have a break. And I didn't want to take a break because I was like, maybe sobriety will be great. I wanted to take a break to reset my tolerance and like all of that. The
Yeah.
intention the whole time was to drink again after
Okay.
the 90 days. But yeah, I was desperate. I took the break, and I found that the suicidal thoughts went away. And it was around like the 2 month mark that I finally realized the connection between not drinking and not feeling that way. And then, of course, day 90 comes around. I decided that I was cured and I would be able to drink again moderately, even though I had never done that before. And I started drinking again. And, over the course of a few months, blew up my life again. All the suicidal thoughts came back, all of it. But it was the experience of stopping and seeing that they went away that helped me finally accept it. So if I hadn't had that break, I would have never realized like that's just what alcohol does to me. That's just the way that I drink. And then I was able to accept like any length of time break is not going to be enough to change the way that I drink. And then I accepted it and quit.
Wow, that's just, I don't, and I mean, I don't know. I was sharing with you. I've listened to a bunch of your episodes. I don't know if I heard that part of your story about taking the 90-day break and then drinking again. So that's really interesting. And just kind of like thinking back to the stories that I heard when I worked at that recovery or addictions recovery center, like that sounds like a pretty familiar, storyline of I just wanted to see if I could reset my tolerance, or if I, what withdrawal, if I had withdrawal symptoms, because if I didn't, then that doesn't mean I have a problem. There's a lot of like justification in, use and behaviors. And so almost like that addictive mindset was still, well, of course, was still there because you hadn't started really recovery, I guess. So when you at that point when you realized like this, it's the alcohol, what did you do to after that, like moving forward to like to kind of stay on the path of not using?
So I did nothing at first.
Okay. That's okay.
Because
Nothing's
yeah,
better
so
than going back to drinking, I guess.
yeah, I didn't go back to drinking, but I did nothing to help myself. I thought that I could just not drink, and that was enough. I
Okay.
didn't realize that that wasn't actually like my problem. But I had what you were saying about like the lack of withdrawal symptoms. I had actually done a 7-day challenge years before, and that was to prove that I wasn't an alcoholic, because if I actually had a problem, I wouldn't be able to stop for 7 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because I had the experience of stopping twice and not having too much trouble with it, I determined that I didn't need any support and I could just not drink and do my thing. And that's what I did for a while. And I stopped. So 3 years ago was right before the holiday season,
Mm-hmm.
before quarantine happened. So there
Right.
were a ton of parties, and in biotech, there's all kinds of happy hours, drinking at work and after work, not during.
Right. I
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, and I went to all of these parties and I would be so stressed out because there's alcohol everywhere. There were drink pushers because everyone knew me as a drinker. And then all of a sudden, I just wasn't. And I would go to the party, not drink, and then come home and cry from the stress. And it wasn't until quarantine happened 4 months later that I finally got some help because I worked in a lab. And when I was sent home, I can't bring the lab work to my house. So I had a lot more time. And there wasn't this like weird worry about, leaving at the same time every week to go to therapy and like everybody's going to know. So I started doing therapy at home and it was so much more accessible than therapy had been in the past for me.
Yeah.
And I started working with someone who specializes in addiction and helping people with drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed everything. Before that, I was so angry. I was so stressed out, overwhelmed. I wasn't drinking,
Mm-hmm.
and I was obviously doing like a million times better, but I still wasn't great. And I still had a lot of feelings that I didn't know what to do with. And so my therapist really helped me learn, I guess, why I felt the way that I did and what to do with those feelings instead of like drink or emotionally eat or like freak out at other people.
Right. I can imagine. So was it hard in the beginning to try these new like coping skills, or did it feel weird or awkward or
Most of them felt dumb.
yeah.
Like all the
Right.
ones that you hear, like go on a walk, take
Right.
a bath,
Yeah.
journal,
Right.
like they all just felt so stupid and like they wouldn't help at all because I was so used to instant gratification and like things just like helping
Right.
immediately
Yeah.
because I could use alcohol or food or lack of food or exercise or like anything else self-destructive to immediately
Yeah.
do whatever I wanted it to do. And now all of a sudden I didn't have that power anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn like what do real people do day to day.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was really hard to give things a chance and not go into it with like a bad attitude.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, I remember that too. I remember like we'd give these list of coping skills to people and they would just look at it and just like roll their eyes and be like, "Do you do this? Like, is this what a normal person does?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually, it works really well. Like, go for a walk or try meditation." And they were just like, "All right,
Yep.
I'll take your word for it." And it took a while. I mean, I remember them because I worked in a program where it was like intensive outpatient. So it was like 3 hours a day of the therapy. And then they'd have to come back and report on like how their day went and their night went. And I do remember that. Do you remember? Did you have something like the stuff that you learned then? Are you still doing now?
Yeah, the one that helped me the most, that I still do now, I call it the rage walk. It's
Okay.
when you're very angry and you go on a walk. I think it's self-explanatory, but walking helps me more than anything else because when I still have urges to drink, even though like I know it's not possible for me, I accept it. But when something really bad happens that's unexpected, my mind still goes there. It's still like drink a bunch of alcohol, blow up your life, and then it sprinkles in this little like no one will know.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I bet. But
And
but people do know. I'm guessing. Like,
right, everyone's
yeah.
gonna know.
Right.
I'm gonna know I
Right.
matter.
Right.
Um, and I'm able to just be like, no, I can't do that. It's
Mhm.
still my first thought, but I can dismiss it now. But the only thing I found that really helps is walking with super loud music. And that helps me more than anything else to just like calm down.
Mhm.
And then once I'm calm, then I can handle the situation.
Wow. Okay. So it's for you, it sounds like anger and is something that really, really takes you down. That the
Yeah.
the whole of wanting to use. So it's Boston and it's cold. What do you do when you want to go on a walk and it's Boston's like not a warm place?
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I've been worrying about recently because I've become, now that I'm self-employed and I work out of my house, I've become very reliant on my walks. Sometimes I'll go on like 3 walks a day or something, just like around the neighborhood or to Starbucks or, and I started realizing like it's going to snow, there's going to be ice everywhere, and then what? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to think of what's the next best thing for me. Like I can still go on a walk if I have boots and I tough it out, but it's not really as accessible as it is in the other 3 seasons. So that's a problem I'm currently working on. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is a big concern.
Yeah. What did you do last year? Were you walking last year? Was that one of your?
Last year, I don't think I was. I think I fell off. And because I had a lot of trouble with quarantine, I think it was like a quarantine sobriety combo. But I had been going to the gym 6 days a week at
Mm.
like 5:30 in the morning while I was drinking every day. Like
Oh my gosh.
sometimes I would be too sick to go and I would skip occasionally, but like I almost never skipped it. It was very routine. And then when the gym shut down, I fell off the routine and I got really messed up. And I'm still struggling 3 years later, like to really get it back and enjoy the gym as much as I did pre-sobriety. But yeah, I think I just fell off everything
Mm-hmm.
and I just worked. And I had been working on my podcast and all my other stuff before my full-time job and then after my full-time job. So it was a good way to distract myself and not need as many coping skills.
I gotcha.
Probably not a good thing to do, but
Yeah. Well, but I understand you put a lot of your energy and your time into creating the podcast, and that, I mean, maybe that took the place of needing to, put your energy somewhere, and it was a creative way. Yeah. Okay. So your husband, he's been with you this like, when you were drinking, when you were going through the challenges, and now in recovery. If he was here, like, what would he say about your story?
I love that question actually. What would he say? I feel like he would say that I had a really hard time,
Mhm.
but that he thinks I'm a good person. He's very simple. He wouldn't go into it too much, but I feel like that's what he would say. And he witnessed all of it. Like I started drinking like right when I met him. So he witnessed like all the craziness, like when I had just started experimenting and then when it got really bad and then when it got even worse and
Right.
then the breaks and
Yeah.
so he was there for every second of it.
Did he ever ask you not to drink?
No, he thought what I was doing was normal, which was really tough. And I think it made it harder in a way to quit because no one had a problem with what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he saw it every day, but he was the only one that saw the quantity
Mm-hmm.
that I was drinking and how it was affecting me. But he thought like adults just kind of grow up and drink every day. He grew up around heavy drinking and he thought like that's just kind of what you do when you're an adult. So he really did not think that it was weird behavior or abnormal or anything like that. He thought the only problem was how much I hated myself afterwards, but he didn't think that the actual alcohol was a problem. So because of that, I never had to hide anything or like sneak around. I still preferred to drink alone because I always had this like feeling of shame because I would drink way more than him and way faster than him, but I never hid it around him because there was no there was no like request to back off or do anything different.
Right. Right. Okay. I gotcha. Does he ever come on your show? Was
He did once in the first year of my show. He came on and we talked about it and like from his perspective. It was episode 32. So it was
mm,
almost like 100 episodes ago, but that was a hard conversation to like hear it from
yeah.
his perspective and like how hard it was for him to observe all of that. And he doesn't really share too much because I know he doesn't want to make me feel bad, but he was able to really just say everything that he thought and just said it was awful for him to be in that loop too, because he wasn't sleeping either. He was trying to stay awake and comfort me when I was awake most nights, beating myself up. So he was really impacted by it too, because he was always there for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. He sounds like a really good guy. Really
Yeah,
good.
he's the best. I'm lucky.
Yeah. What does he think about you now being full-time employed with your podcast? And I mean, we'll get into all that. Like, I want to ask you some questions because I do have listeners that are also therapists who have podcasts, and I want you to share what you're doing because I think it's amazing. But what does he think about your shift in from leaving your, a job? I know you've mentioned this on your show, like you were doing really well with your biochemist position, and then you leave it just to do this. What was that like for you guys? Or how does he feel about that?
It was something that I had been not so much working towards, but it was like a dream that I thought maybe would be possible someday. So he was aware of
Mhm.
that. And he was also aware that I was really unhappy at my job. And things were happening at my job that were triggering me to drink
Mm.
and making me feel like really, really upset and bad about myself. And low self-worth is what triggers me to drink more than anything else. And the triggers just like kept happening. And he saw how miserable I was. And, that kind of impacted his life too, because I would talk about it all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So it wasn't like a shock for him, but he definitely wasn't excited about the gigantic pay cut.
Yeah. I bet
Yeah,
that would be hard.
it was a big pay cut, and I still haven't made back my salary, but I have hope that I can get, maybe 3/4 of the way next year or something. But I think it was hard for him because he just worries about me. He worries that, maybe it wouldn't work out. And then I have like all this public stuff and a gap in my resume and trying to go back into lab work and having to explain it. I think he was more worried about that and like how public it would be. And all of our friends and family
Right.
will know about it, obviously. And I think he was just worried about my mental health.
Enjoying this episode and want to learn about treating addiction? If so, then be sure to check out episode 66 with Katie Turman, titled An Overview of Addiction and Treatment Models. Katie is a social worker and licensed addiction counselor with over 20 years of experience working in the field of addiction recovery. And in her episode, she covers the risk factors associated with addiction. She discusses the biopsychosocial disease model and how treatment models can support this medical model. And she talks about the biology of substance use disorder and the roles dopamine and oxytocin play. It's a great episode if you're wanting a primer on addiction and treatment. Plus, it's also a continuing education pod course. So if you need CE contact hours, head over to my site, lisamustard.freshlearn.com, to purchase the course and get your contact hour. Hey, and while you're over on my site, be sure to check out all of my continuing education pod courses. The links are in the show notes too. I gotcha. Okay. And when you heard it, well, I mean, when you hear that or when you say it out loud, like, how do you feel about your decision now? Like, do you worry about that stuff?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
That like gap in the resume. I know it's not a gap like I have a business, but
Mhm.
like putting that on my resume to share with potential employers, I thought that I would be unemployable forever
Mm.
if I did it. And that was my concern. But the triggers kept appearing and I kept feeling an urge to drink.
Mhm.
And it just didn't feel like I could be there anymore. So I felt kind of like pushed out, just like I experienced with getting started in sobriety. But now my mental health is 1,000 times better than it was when I was working full time. Yeah, I don't have the security and, the retirement, whatever, and the big paycheck and the bonuses every 3 months. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
stuff was really
Oh,
nice and hard to part with. But I think mental health is more important. And for me, it's not about like being super rich. I don't want to be broke,
right.
but I don't need like a 6-figure salary and bonuses every 3 months.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I hear you. It is hard, when you have that job, and I call them the golden handcuffs. Yeah,
Yes.
no, it's like you got the insurance, I mean, you're making bonuses every 3 months, oh my gosh. I don't know. I'm thinking like, what could I do with that money
Right?
with kids and like all their activities? But yeah, I mean, I know at the end of the day, if your mental health is suffering, it's not worth it. It's your life, it's not worth it. So that takes a lot of courage to decide that you wanted to leave. So I have a feeling you'll reach your goals, you know. I imagine that you're probably, in terms of maybe how you define success, like you're already kind of there, maybe. Because you're
Yeah, I have a very high standard for myself.
mm, okay.
So I think to most regular standards, I'm there, but I have very, very high standards. And I feel, even though like my husband is the most supportive guy ever, I feel this like need to prove to him, like, see, this was the right
Mm-hmm.
choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've already mostly done that.
Mm-hmm.
I have some like exciting stuff going on at the end of the year and the beginning of next year. But I feel that I need to justify it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Well, I can understand that. I feel like it's very common. I mean, thinking about like, I don't know, this is not about me by any means, but I can like, I can relate on a lot of levels, you know, um, having the desire to do something different and to help people, but not use the same skill set that you've been trained to use. And for whatever reason, it's like you feel this calling to do something different. And um, yeah, it's pretty exciting. Okay, so let's talk about let's shift a little bit and talk about all the things that you do. So oh gosh, I mean, where do we start? Where would you like to start with all the things that you do? Because you do a lot.
Yeah, I collect jobs. I'm better at collecting jobs than having one big job.
Okay.
So that's something everybody should know about me. So what I do is I write for WebMD. I have my own podcast. I have a podcast network, and I think those are the main things. Oh, and I
Yeah.
have a membership.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think before you talk a little bit about those things, so I remember hearing your story, you talk about how you just started your podcast one day because you just were like, you were impulsive and I'm the same way. Like I just started my podcast one day, like I'm just going to do it. So can you talk about like how you started the podcast and then like maybe how it's grown and how it's shaped how you've collected those different jobs? I think that would be a cool way to introduce every single one of them.
Yeah, I am very impulsive and I chase excitement, which, is probably why I drink so much. But
maybe one reason. But I do hear that from people in recovery. Like they would say that. So I don't,
yeah,
I think that's pretty common. Yeah.
yeah, I still chase those big highs.
Mm-hmm.
I just get them in a different way, and they're not as high and short-lived anymore. But yeah, I had been researching addiction on my own
Mm-hmm.
in my spare time, and that became my new hobby when I stopped sitting around drinking every day. I started reading instead and learning about, like, why me?
Right.
Why did this happen to me, and why didn't it happen to my husband, who was also drinking a lot with me?
Right.
And the more I learned, the better I felt about myself, because I really believed like it was all my fault. I was a loser. I had no self-control. I'm a weak person. And I really believed all of that. And that's why I hated myself so much during it. And as I educated myself, I learned like all the things that could have contributed to the loss of control.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me feel like it wasn't so much a me thing. It wasn't like a moral thing. It was just like a collection of risk factors. And I saw it more like a case study instead of like who I am and my worth.
Gotcha.
And one day, just randomly, I woke up and I was like, I need to share this. Everybody must know this information. But nobody knew who I was besides like my coworkers, and I didn't want to share it with those guys. And I thought, like, how can I tell everybody this information? And I thought, like, okay, well, I could do a YouTube channel, but I don't know how to do that. And that feels really intimidating to be on video. I could do a podcast, which I also don't know how to do. I could write a blog. And then I was like, do people read them? I don't know. Are those still cool? So I settled on podcast. And then I just like Googled it and found out how to host it and like made some really ugly, boring cover art. And then I was ready to record my first episode and I realized like I don't know how to record. So I actually got on a Zoom call with myself because that was the only way I knew how to record something.
Mm.
And I Zoom called myself for the first 19 episodes before like I figured out a different way to do it.
Awesome.
And I just like launched it that day. I had no social media. No one knew who I was. I had no presence. And I just like put it into the world and then made an Instagram account
Mm-hmm.
all in like the same afternoon.
Nice. Wow. That's inspiring. I mean, you just did it. Like you just did it. I love how you Googled everything. That's
Yeah, Google can't tell you how much to charge for things. I wouldn't Google those answers, but
great.
how to like do something or set up tech stuff, Google or YouTube is perfect for that. And a lot of people get stuck in the details, like they have to have the perfect cover art and the
Yeah.
perfect launch strategy. And unless you're someone that has a big following, that doesn't matter. The 5 people that listen to it on day one, like if I had the perfect launch strategy and I waited a month and like teased it to my 0 followers on Instagram and like, no, that's not going to have a big impact. Maybe I would have had 10 listeners instead of 5. So that's why I just like impulsively did it. And then I focused on like, how can I grow this and get people to know about it and that instead of having like the perfect plan.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so how did you decide to do the membership? Did that come next or like, no? Okay.
That's the last thing
Okay.
that I started actually, because I had a lot of people that wanted to connect with me and I wanted to connect with them too, because we
Mhm.
just kind of sit by ourselves and like talk to our computers and a bunch of people listen, but
Mhm.
we don't really know that much about them. Sometimes they reach out, but we don't really get to speak to them. So I wanted to create a place where we could all talk to each other. And I
Mhm.
had a lot of requests for meetings. Like every time I asked people like, what do you want? What can I do to support you? In my head thinking like more content.
Mhm.
And everybody kept saying like meetings, support, community. So
Wow.
I just started it and we do meetings like 1 to 2 times a week. It's
Mhm.
not like group coaching or anything like that. It's just like a support meeting to share kind of what's going on in your life or what you're worried about, or a safe space. Like if someone had a drink, they will often like feel really safe sharing it with the group, which makes me feel good that we have created such a safe space together.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was the last thing that started showing up. And I didn't do that until I quit my job and had more time.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. And so the podcast is slowly growing, I guess. You're getting more listeners, I know your following is going up. So then what did you do from there? Like how did you, well, I guess so you did eventually quit your job. So how were you making money along the way that you could replace some of that income before the membership?
I didn't
No.
make like any money.
Okay.
Year one, I made like $0. I think I had a buy me a coffee page, I think, so maybe I made a little bit of money,
Mhm.
but it was close to $0. And I just focused on growth. That was it. How can I grow my social media? How can I grow the listenership? How can I make it better? How can I get discovered more? How
Sure.
can I build relationships with other creators? I only focused on that. And then at the end of that first year, that's when I started feeling like, wow, maybe this could actually become a thing.
Mhm.
And before that, I thought it was just kind of like a hobby that no one cared about.
Mhm.
And after that, then I started trying to monetize. And in my second year, that's when I started working with sponsors for the podcast. And I had like ebooks and little things like that. But it was mostly through sponsorship. And I charged so low for sponsorship because I Googled it. That's why
Yeah.
I said earlier, don't Google how much to charge. So I think I made $6,000 that second year, which is like
Awesome.
also almost nothing.
Yeah, but it's
And
something. But I
I was
guess,
proud of it.
yeah, I mean, I guess compared to how much you were charging, were you doing that CPM model?
I was doing
Yeah.
CPM and I was charging like the lowest rate. I charged $18 CPM because Google will tell you 18 to $25 is typical.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I'm like, I don't think anybody will want to sponsor me ever. So I should do 18. And so when you have like, not a ton of listeners and you're charging $18 CPM, it's like $18 an episode.
Right. Right. I gotcha.
So yeah, it didn't amount to very much, but I
Mhm.
did work with a few different sponsors and then I learned like, wow, they are actually getting a really good return.
Mhm.
And then I started raising my rates and like actually doing better by the end of that year. But yeah, it was a learning curve.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much with my podcast, and yeah, we could probably trade stories on all the different things that we've learned, but I do think that sharing, what you've experienced helps other people because it's just the authenticity behind what you've done to grow your show and to get sponsors. I mean, you guys can go and listen to I know I just listened to an episode where you were sharing how you grew your Instagram followers. Was it on podcast growth hacks? Is that it? Yeah, okay. That was a great episode. So the stuff that you shared, I'll put the link in the show notes so you guys can check it out. But there's, what you shared, the value and how you grew your Instagram following. I mean, I'm taking notes. Like, this is what I need to be doing. And I really loved how you said reels are not, was it reels or audiograms? One of the two. Audiograms are
Audiograms.
not where it's at. So I need to rethink the whole audiogram game. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and then from there, you decided to start your network. Is that right? That is awesome. I just joined a network myself and I've it's amazing to have, other podcasters in our space to share ideas with and to collaborate with. And I mean, gosh, it's like it's opened up so many opportunities for me. It's just been incredible. Yeah. So I know that did you have a hard time starting the network or did you have any doubts about it or what was that like for you?
I think the biggest doubt was no one would join it.
Mm, okay.
Similar to everything else, like no one would want to sponsor my show or no one would listen to my show. So I had that same fear, like I'm gonna try to start a network and then it's just gonna be my podcast in it,
I
which
gotcha.
doesn't count.
Right. Like
Um,
your own network.
yeah. So I kept getting encouragement from people in the podcasting space, like
Mhm,
not other podcasters, like business people
mhm.
and agencies and things like that. And I kept being pushed at work and I was having these triggers to drink and feeling really bad about myself. And then like so many people were telling me like, start a network, that one day I was like, okay, I just have to listen. Like I keep getting this opportunity. People want to help me. So I'm just gonna do it. So I quit my job and I did it. I didn't replace my income. I was not making a bunch of money. I was making like very similar
Right.
monthly to what I made that second year. But I had faith that it would work out. And my husband was like, okay, let's see.
Right.
And I had built up connections because that whole first year and basically all the second year too, I just focused on growth and becoming a well-known expert and other people knowing me. I
Mhm,
had a lot of friends. I asked all my friends to join, and most of them said yeah.
mhm.
So then I had 3 shows in the network, and I'm like, and then mine, so I had 4. So I
Mhm.
was like, this is an actual real network now. And then it was so much easier to get more shows because I had a real network. It wasn't just a crazy idea.
Yeah.
And once people wanted to join, then I felt better. And I had faith that I would figure out like how to set it up and where to host it and how to learn all the different software and find the sponsors and run the campaigns. And so that part was very challenging and time consuming,
Mhm.
but I had the confidence from actually having shows that wanted to work with me.
Yeah, that's such a boost when people see what you want to do and they see value in what you can offer and they're like, "Yeah, all right. I'll give that a try." That's the best, really. That's a huge compliment to the work that you've done and what you've created. I think that's really really special. What are you most excited about, coming up oh gosh, you have so many things, like your different jobs that you collect.
Yeah, I have a couple really exciting things. I have a lot of exciting PR stuff
Mhm.
that is, it's like not 100%, but I think it's like 99% definite. And one of them is potentially like a TV thing, which
Wow.
feels like I need a new outfit to go shopping.
You can, yeah, you need hair, you need makeup, you need like all the stuff. That's really, I know you probably can't say much about that, but wow, that is so cool. Oh my
Yes, I
gosh.
have some very exciting PR things in the works. I think just growing the network, and now it's all set up. It took about 4 months to set it up,
Mhm.
and now it's there, and I'm just making it better.
Yeah,
So I feel excited about that. I have some speaking that I'm doing at podcasting conferences,
cool.
and yeah, I think just making everything better
Hmm.
and trying to resist urges to do too
Mm.
many more things. I also have a business podcast that I'm working on for January about like social media and podcasting and email list, whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Oh, wow.
working on that too. I spent a lot of time yesterday actually recording, and I'm not going to be as impulsive as I was with SoberPowered. I'm going to have like a lot of episodes batched before it launches so that I
Sure.
don't apply a bunch of stress to my life.
Sorry. Yeah. Will that be similar, and will it be solo episodes, or will you bring other people on?
A mix,
Yeah.
some solo, some expert.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, it's amazing what kind of takes shape, as you learn and you grow, you want to, have another opportunity to put that out there, because you also work with people who want to grow their shows, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
I've
another.
done one-on-one
Mhm.
work and consulting, and I've helped people either start shows and not get like bogged down in a bunch of details that don't matter, or I've helped people rebrand or shows that are stagnant, like start growing again. So yeah, I've done a lot of that work too on
Okay.
the side. That's not something that like I heavily promote or market, or it's kind of more like when people approach me. So it's just a time thing that I don't have the time to make it a whole big
Right.
offer.
Yeah. Is the goal for the grind though, is it to monetize that as well? I guess. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I already know how to grow and
Mhm.
monetize a show. So if I could grow that one even to half
Mhm.
what SoberPowered is, the monetization from that would be very nice.
Yeah. Man, so many exciting things. Do you think that any of this would have happened if you were still drinking?
No, I had no creativity.
Yeah.
I had no, I had drive, but I had more like, I don't know the word that I'm looking for. It was like self-serving,
Mhm.
immature, everybody's out to get me kind of drive. Like I would defeat myself a lot. Like I had dreams and I would convince myself that like the world is out to get me. I'll never do this. And so yeah, I stood in my own way all the time, and my dreams like were often unrealistic
Mhm.
and things that like I didn't even fully want. So
Mhm.
then they were super unrealistic. Yeah, and then when I quit drinking, I just got so much more creative and like had time to do things and do them consistently and actually like fully care instead of just caring about the next drink or the or how much I hate myself for the last drink.
Right. Yeah, completely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's such a story of hope, and I mean, gosh, recovery is incredible. Thank you for sharing so much good stuff, Jill. It's been awesome to have you. If folks want to learn more about you, they want to, what is the best way that for them to learn more and to connect?
So if you want to learn about sober stuff,
Mhm.
that would be at soberpowered.com. If you want to learn more about like podcasty business stuff, that would be at soberpoweredmedia.com.
Okay. Okay. And so all of the podcasts that you have in your network, are they around recovery or
Most
sobriety? Okay.
most are, and then one is about emotions and
Mhm.
trauma and things. So it relates very heavily to something that people in addiction would be interested in.
Gotcha. That's Emotional Badass with Nikki,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I love her show. It's a great show. I love her show. Yeah, and your other shows, I want to say one of them is with two therapists that talk about recovery, right? Addiction recovery. Yep. I think Dwayne is, and then Dwayne, I feel like I know
also
him
a therapist.
Yeah, I feel like I know him from another group or something. We all kind of run in the same peripheral, like we're all like ships in the night, I guess, in this world. Well, thank you so much. I just appreciate your time, and I look forward to like following your journey and listening to the grind when it comes out. And I know that just by listening to your show and following you on social media, I mean, I've learned a lot about, podcasting and growth. And yeah, so I just really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Hey guys, before we end this episode, if you are liking my content, if you're liking my podcast, be sure to go over and leave me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you are up for it, I'd love it if you left me a review as well. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.